Welcome to the Pen Leader Podcast, where strategic leaders get straight to the topics, strengthening our awareness and sharpening our minds. The Pen Leader Podcast is produced by Roar, a production division of Mays & Associates Ltd. Find out more at www.maysassociatesltd.com. Now here is your award-winning host, Dr. Shanda Gore.
And welcome back to the Pen Leader Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about car trends, and I am glad to have with me Mr. Ryan Ambrosia, who is the president and CEO of Ambrosia's Automotive in Toledo, Ohio, which is a family-owned business celebrating a decade of excellence in automotive care. He has more than 20 years of experience in the industry. He is automotive technology graduate to an ASE certified master technician with an L1 advanced level diagnostic certificate, and he holds an associate's degree in computer networking and information technologies with a minor in business. He combines traditional mechanical knowledge with cutting-edge technology to lead his business, and he is best known for winning a number of awards, including the Best of Toledo Awards, for automotive and European auto repair. He is dedicated to his craft. He lives in the Toledo area with his family, his wife and children, who he cherishes. And I just love that about the fact that he focuses on his family and prioritizes as such and talks about that. When he's not engaging in his shop, he's looking and working with local educational institutions to foster the next generation of mechanics. So he leads the way to try to help the next generation of mechanics come on board. And he has some extracurricular activities and fun, and we're going to talk about that too, on what he does in his spare time when he's not doing so much education and work in this particular area. So welcome, Mr. Ryan Ambrosia. Hello, Ryan.
Hi, Dr. Gore. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. So I'm going to get it right into this because you've done so much research and you're known for focusing in on car trends. Can you talk about what you think the future of cars looks like, since you're doing so much work and you've got decades of experience in researching and working on cars and working with people who work on cars?
Yeah, so as cars continue to evolve, there is constantly pressure to get more and more fuel economy. Along with that, we want to have more features. And so one of the biggest things that we see in the industry is it's a constant struggle for manufacturers to achieve those goals. And one of the things I reference is corporate average fuel economy. So it's a number that's set by the government, and essentially it says the average fuel economy of your fleet has to be below this number. There's a lot more that goes into it, but at its basic principle, that's kind of the gist. And from right around 1984 until all the way up till about 2003, 2004, that number sat right around 20.1 miles per gallon. Mm-hmm. And then you really started to see a push where we wanted to get more fuel efficient, things like that. And so, fast forward, now that number is over 50. So that's a big jump for these manufacturers. And during that same time, you've seen where technology started to rapidly advance. So now you've got vehicles that have, power seats, power windows, heated seats, so many electronics. And electronics are heavy. Modules are heavy. Wiring's heavy. So you have this combination of now the government is saying, hey, manufacturer A, now your fleet has to get 30 miles to the gallon, but on the same side, now your vehicle weighs thousands of pounds more. So manufacturers have really tried over the years to increase that fuel economy. And the way that they've done that is because they can't take away a lot of those electronics, because no one's going to buy a car at this point that doesn't have lane departure and all the fancy stuff, right? So that weight is kind of there. So how do we get better fuel economy? Well, we start to either reduce the size of the motor or we add a lot of fancy features to it. And what we're seeing over the past, really the past 10 years is a lot of technology, variable valve timing, multiple cylinder displacement, cam phasing, all these systems that are on these engines to help them achieve these really crazy fuel economy numbers. All of that is driven by high pressure oil. So oil used to just be a lubricant. It was just there basically to kind of lubricate the engine in its most simple fashion. Well, now you have all these systems that are 100% crucial to the way the engine runs to achieve these fuel economy standards, and are all dependent on very high quality oil, very high quality synthetic oils being properly maintained. And we're seeing a lot of issues with that. I would say probably 60% of vehicles that come into our shop from a variety of different issues all boil down to lack of oil changes or lack of quality oil changes. And so you're seeing in the industry where there's a lot of distrust there's a lot of people that no longer have that brand loyalty they used to because there's been so many issues. I mean, you could do a quick Google search on most cars and you can just find a slew of, class action lawsuits and all kinds of stuff. We see so many engines that are blowing at 40,000 miles. And a lot of it is again, it's because we're pushing these engines to do so much more than really, frankly, they were designed to in the name of trying to hit these numbers. One, we start to see this EV trend, right? So everybody's going to electric vehicles.
Right.
And a lot of the manufacturers, they were kind of caught off guard a little bit and they kind of rushed into it. They started to make these EVs, frankly, a little haphazardly, and they didn't have the R&D that I think that really needed to go into them. So you start to get customers that have range anxiety, which is, you get into your car and you can drive to Florida because there's going to be gas stations along the way. And with EVs, you don't really know that. It's kind of uncertain. How long does it take to charge? Can I charge with this charger? Do I need this charger? And it really kind of was a failed experiment by a lot of manufacturers where they put a lot of money into EVs and they didn't see the sales that they wanted, or the sales that they did have were plagued with horrible reviews. So the industry now is trending really heavily back towards hybrids.
And there's two things there. One, you're talking about oil changes. When you hear I heard someone say, I don't have to change my oil for another 10,000 miles. And I'm thinking to myself, really? You can get away with almost 10,000 miles of not having an oil change? And then, so you're saying in some of the aspects, side on the side of changing your oil sooner if you can. That's the first thing I think I heard.
Absolutely. And one of the things that most consumers don't know, and nobody reads their owner's manuals. Let's be honest. When's the last time anybody opened their owner's manual and read it? And a lot of these vehicles, when you open it up, it'll tell you in there specifically, you can go 10,000 miles between oil changes. It has to be this specific oil, this particular certification, and it'll say every 2,000 miles, a quart of oil consumption is normal. Well, people don't realize that. So they're going to the cheapest oil change place they can find. They're getting their oil change and they're driving for 10,000 miles. Well, unbeknownst to them, by the time it comes around for the next oil change, it's got half the oil that it started with in there because it's operating as it was designed to. But again, as a byproduct of a lot of those systems, they inherently use oil just kind of as a byproduct. There's a lot that goes into it. But so we see a lot of that where customers come in, they're like, I don't understand. I just had my oil change 6,000 miles ago. It's not due. Well, it's like, well, yeah, but you have no oil in the motor now.
Oh, so this is when the damage happens.
Correct.
Oh, and so now with the electric vehicles, but now we've got this range anxiety that you just mentioned. That's the first time I've heard that, but I don't have an electric vehicle, so in full transparency, I don't. But if I did, I would be worried because I do so much traveling that I'm like, am I going to make it to where I can charge? And then do I have the time to sit there to let it charge?
Yeah, by and large, there's been kind of a pullback. It's weird right now. I kind of use the analogy of like the iPhone to Tesla. You've got approximately just under 10% of all vehicle sales are electric, and that includes hybrids. And of that 10%, Tesla typically owns about 48%. And so outside of that, they've been largely tried and true. You see the Tesla supercharger, you see stuff like that. There's a sense of confidence there with those. But when you get into a lot of those other brands, they haven't done a great job of really instilling that confidence in their customers to explain those things. A lot of people don't know. You can charge at all of those stations, right? There's adapters you can get. There's things you can do to help to change that. But yes, by and large, we're seeing where essentially if you wanted an electric vehicle and you liked them, you pretty much bought one. Everybody else that is even a little bit on the fence is kind of holding right now because again, there's a lot of unknowns there. And so where we're seeing a huge shift back towards the hybrids because you don't really have that range anxiety. And there's a couple different levels of hybrids. There's ones that are strictly just hybrids. You start them, you drive them. And then there's plug-in hybrids where you can plug them in, but then they also charge by going down the road. So there's a lot of fluidity in the market right now. These manufacturers are also still trying to figure it out. It's borderline comical when you see some of the vehicles that come in with these early stage.
Yeah, what are you saying that's unusual? Is there anything that you can think of that's unusual?
Well, and I don't want to drop a lot of brand names. I don't want to
no, of course not.
Anything, but there's certain small passenger vehicles that come in and it's technically classified as a hybrid, and literally everything about the vehicle is identical to its gas counterpart, but it's just got an electronic motor that now takes the place of the alternator. So all it does is it takes a little bit of load off the engine. So when the engine's running, it's rotating that serpentine belt, which is driving your water pump. It's driving all those functions, right? Anything that runs by the pulley, right? Your water pump, your alternator, power steering, all that stuff, right? And so that's literally all they've done is they put this little electronic motor on there. It's really not doing a lot. It might be saving a couple miles points, but they're able to put this little green leaf on their call and call it a hybrid. So we see a lot of that too. And I think the industry just as a whole has done itself a disservice by really losing the customer's trust because of a lot of those practices where I think looking back, they should have just taken their time, done it right the first time. And they would have been in a better position. So I think the future will eventually be very large amount of electric vehicles. I think it's going to be a lot longer than they expect based on just the sentiment of consumers. So I do think over the next 5-10 years, I think you're going to see a large flood of hybrid vehicles. I think you're going to see, I would venture to say that it wouldn't surprise me if 80% of vehicles sold become hybrids. It really wouldn't surprise me because it's a very good compromise on both parts.
Well, I know you have a certification, ASE Certified Master Technician with an L1 Advanced Level Diagnostic Certificate. Can you talk a little bit about how that certificate is really helping make a difference for you, and then what it looks like, especially because to me, that's leader space. That's where you are a lead. So people probably ask you a lot of questions. What does that mean, and what do you do with that certificate?
So you have the ASE certifications, which they have a number of them, from brakes to steering, suspension, transmissions. And then on the advanced L1 side, it's specifically designed towards engine performance and electrical. So it's almost kind of like, if you think of it like almost like a master's degree in that training, right? It's a lot harder certification to pass, but it gets into the really, really thick of things, right? How do we diagnose a vehicle that maybe it's only acting up on cold days or warm days, or we have to trace down a module that's not communicating with another module, right? We need to know how to actually tap in so we can view the computers talking to each other, right? So we have to actually understand, all right, that body control module is offline. It's not talking to the engine control module. Well, we actually have to know how to interpret that computer data. So we have to tie into that computer line, and then we can actually graph that and figure out, is it not communicating? Is it a dirty signal? Is it broken? And so that certification encompasses all of that, if that makes sense.
What is the opportunity for the advancement of vehicles? Now, I just saw something that said driverless vehicles. I know at one point there were pizza companies that were promoting the fact that your pizza is going to get delivered, but there won't be a human being in the car. What are your thoughts on driverless vehicles, and how is that impacting, just how you're seeing people utilize them or not utilizing them?
Yeah, so it's really, really fascinating from our perspective. We love technology, we love vehicles. So all that stuff is we just love it. But it is very, very different space. And I think we could definitely get to a point, I think this is where we're going, where you could potentially own one of these driverless vehicles, and you could drive to work, and then when you're working, you can put it into essentially a valet mode, and it goes out and it's actually picking up people and dropping people off, and essentially making you money while it's doing that. I think when you get to that level of sophistication and that style of EV, the full self-driving technology really has come a long way. At the very high end of the technology, they're doing a really good job with it. They've got a really good success rates. So I don't think that is as far away as people might think. I think in the next couple of years, I think we're really going to start seeing a lot more of that on the road. As far as how that affects the industry, because full electric vehicles, they have a lot less moving parts. There really is a lot less maintenance to do on them. So you're not going to see the amount of maybe preventative maintenance that is required for those types of vehicles, just because of the inherent nature and the way they work. So I think the industry, at least in that sector, is probably going to trend more towards like a cell phone. If you buy your new cell phone and you crack the screen after a week or two, you're probably going to pay to fix it. If it's 2.5 years old and you crack the screen, you're not going to spend the money to fix it. You're going to trade it in. And that's kind of where I envision the industry going. I think we're going to get to a point where if you're in that area where you're buying these full electric vehicles, it's going to probably be a 5 to 10 year thing, and then you're going to want to trade it in, right? Because the technology is going to advance, and the software is going to advance faster than the hardware can keep up. So there's not going to really be a way to constantly upgrade those older models. So I really do think it's going to mimic very much like cell phones and laptops and stuff, where you kind of have a shelf life. It's not that the car physically is breaking down, it's outdated. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Talk to me about leadership and what that looks like. You work hard to get the next generation of mechanics going and up to speed, and it's just a whole other world than it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. What advice would you give anyone who wants to go into space, tap into getting their own advanced level diagnostic certificate? What would you suggest to those that are interested in working on cars?
So there's a quote that I like, and it says, an expert is a person who's made all the mistakes in a very narrow field. And I think that holds true in a lot of regards, and very much so in ours. You can read and you can study every book, but until you really get in there and you put your hands on some of these vehicles and you understand how they work and how things come apart, that's really when you start to get to that next level. So my advice to young people really is to put yourself out there and open yourself up for internships. If you really are passionate about the industry, reach out to your local shop. Reach out to, maybe not so much the bigger dealerships, they might be more reluctant, but if you have a smaller shop, reach out to them and say, hey, listen, I really want to get into this industry. Can I come in for 2 hours a day? I'll take the trash out. I just want to be around cars. I want to learn. And I think that is so valuable because, again, you get to put what you've learned in the books into practice. And, you talk to people and one of the things I think that really helps us is we've got mechanics that we've collectively all been doing this our entire lives. There's not a whole lot of stuff that we haven't seen. Even if it's something we haven't seen, we've seen some iteration of it. We know how to navigate it. And that's really where you get some of these younger mechanics that they haven't seen things and they really struggle with it. So that would be my biggest advice is put yourself out there, be willing to kind of donate your time, if that makes sense, in exchange for that. Like that would be my biggest tip.
Oh, excellent. Well, I know you're so busy and you're involved in a number of organizations and again, always promoting and really thinking about the next generation. That's one thing that I really enjoy conversations with you about, that next generation, that 5 years, 10 years, what that looks like. But I have to ask you, what do you do in your spare time? What do you do to relax? And what are you reading? What are you watching?
I don't watch a ton of TV, honestly, but right now I'm actually watching the Tulsa King TV show, so I enjoy that. As far as reading goes, again, I struggle with reading traditional books, so I do a lot of audiobooks. I'm actually re-listening to The Obstacle Is Away by Ryan Holiday. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I've listened to it a couple times, so I'm listening to that right now. And as far as my spare time, I love the gym. I love training with weights. I think it really helps me. I don't know if it's the term manufactured friction. You get in there and you're kind of overcoming goals, and it's really it's not to sound maybe selfish, but it's like the only time during the day where nobody needs anything from me. It's just me and the weights, and I just can focus, and whatever problems that I have, it really helps with clarity and just kind of getting myself ready for my day. So
excellent. I have to admit, I've never looked at a weight and said, boy, there's my relaxed time. I have to admit.
That's fair.
That's perception, right?
For
and
sure.
Perspective. All right. Well, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for sharing about car trends. It is a fascinating future. Appreciate your time and coming and bringing some of that knowledge.
I appreciate you. It means so much to me that you invited me on the show. You've had so many high caliber guests, and I'm so honored to be here.
Oh, you are right there. I bet some of those guests would know what you just mentioned and know that knowledge. And so thank you for being a master in your trade.
Thank you.
Thank you. And to our listeners, we appreciate you and your time and sharing the show. I'd like to share some information. We do have the Pen Leader Path book. Will be coming out March of 2025, and we hope that you all will join the wait list, which you can find at www.mazeassociatesltd.com and click on book. It will be about identifying, engaging, and developing effective human and AI leadership for your organizational culture. So until next time.
The Pen Leader podcast is hosted by Dr. Shanda Gore and brought to you by Maze & Associates Ltd, creating customized solutions for growth in the areas of leadership development, strategic planning, and culture building. Find out more at www.mazeassociatesltd.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Pen Leader podcast and share with others.